We'll start at wide receivers. Let's just take a look at Keep Trade Cut. This is basically the community, how the community feels about dynasty rankings and where some of these guys are. I mean, who's too high, who's too low. Let's take a look at it. So we'll look at the wide receivers first here. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CD Lamb, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown. I mean, you can kind of put the 3 through 5 kind of in any order, right? By age, that automatically kind of pushes AJ Brown down, which I'm okay with. Putting Amon-Ra kind of above there. I mean, how do you feel about that? And then we get into Tyreek Hill. I mean, it's hard to put him any lower, even with age, compared to what he's doing, production wise.
What's wild about AJ Brown is he's only 26 and a half. It feels like he's 30. Like, I feel like he's been around for so long. And that's what happens when you get a guy like, and he goes to Philadelphia, right? And he plays in a ton of playoff games. He plays in a ton of these big, marquee games. It feels like he's been around for a lot longer. So I think you're pretty spot on with your analysis of the top 5 per se. I think I'd have AJ Brown a little bit higher than Amon-Ra, but they're interchangeable. They're interchangeable in my estimation. To be honest, I really think it's the top 3, and then that's those secondary guys after that.
Yep.
I think CD Lamb has proven he belongs in that Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, in that tier with those guys. So I think you move CD Lamb kind of in that, because it was always JJ and Chase for the most part, like that were separated. I think CD Lamb belongs in there. And it was interesting because CD Lamb got off to a bit of a slow start. If you remember early in the season, we're like, what the hell is going on with CD Lamb? Is he good? What's going on with Dak? Blah, blah, blah. And then CD Lamb just put on the burners. Him and Dak started clicking. Dak got in the MVP race, and obviously CD Lamb was a huge beneficiary of that production. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that, with those top 5. And then obviously, if Cheetah was 3 years younger, he'd be in that range as well.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And then we got Garrett Wilson, right? I mean, Garrett Wilson was all the way up to wide receiver 4 or 5 kind of before the season with Aaron Rodgers. Now he's hurt. So I do think that might jump up as we get into the offseason, into next season. Like, as soon as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, they're practicing, like, he could possibly jump up when that happens. Chris Olave, top 10. I mean, is Puka a little bit too high?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'd have Waddle ahead of Puka. You can make the case for Ayuk as well. But for me, taking a deeper dive, I think Garrett Wilson, and I don't know if you've heard the news, I think Aaron Rodgers was talking on Pat McAfee, and he basically said he wants to play, this year, and there's no definitive retirement talk out of Aaron Rodgers. So I think that solidifies Garrett Wilson kind of in that top 7, 8-ish. You think Aaron's going to be there for at least 2 more years, right? Like that has to make you feel really good about Garrett Wilson. So I think Garrett Wilson is properly slotted. And listen, we've seen what Garrett Wilson's done without Aaron Rodgers. So the fact that he's going to get Aaron for at least 2 more years has to make you feel really good about his prospects going forward.
So, yeah, I mean, Puka, I'm with you. I would have Waddle ahead of him. We've got Ayuk. We've got Devonta, Addison. Tank Dell obviously jumped up. He'll move back down probably soon, with the injury. But JSN is down here. Michael Pittman. Drake London is all the way down here. DJ Moore is all the way down here, and he's a top 10 guy right now. T. Higgins is all the way down at wide receiver 23. At the moment, behind guys like Zay Flowers, Debo, Nico Collins. You got Rashid Rice jumping all the way up to 25. Jaden Reed jumping all the way up to 26, followed by Christian Watson. I feel like it's a big almost mush after wide receiver. I would have kind of JSN and
12.
I would have JSN, Drake London, DJ Moore probably up a little bit higher above guys like Tank Dell, Jordan Addison.
Do you think
is a question, Brandon? You can kind of right up in there. T. Higgins, I would move up as well.
Do you think for guys like Puka and for Jordan Addison, their quarterback situation, right? I know Matthew Stafford is there, but we've seen Matthew Stafford kind of break down a little bit. Obviously, last year was just a complete loss of a season. And even this year, Matthew Stafford missed a few games, and he's getting older. He's not very mobile. So the uncertainty at the quarterback position for both Puka and Addison, you know, kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. I think they're fantastic. I think Addison, if Kirk Cousins was still there, he'd be right up there for rookie of the year, the way he was performing. So I'm a big fan of Addison. I've been a big fan of Addison since the season started, and I found out he went to Minnesota. I'm like, opposite JJ, you got Kirk Cousins slinging it 40 times a game. Hawkinson's there. Like, it was the perfect place for Addison to go for him to be extremely productive. So I just wonder how the quarterback situation kind of shakes out as far as Addison's value goes.
Well, that's my thing. It's like after kind of like the top maybe 12, 13-ish, it's kind of just they're all almost the same, but they're differently ranked and differently thought of in the community. Like, really, how much of a difference is it between a T. Higgins, who's all the way down here at 23, and Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith, Drake? Like, what is the difference? They're almost 12 spots apart, but is there really that much of a difference? Do you think that that is somewhere maybe that we can take advantage of in the community? Because all those guys are in the same tier, right? They're all going to pretty much do the same. So can I move down or moved up based on what the community feels and kind of take advantage and pick up some assets at the same time? You know, can I move off of Tank Dell for it might be hard after T. Higgins' last game that he just had, but people hate DK Metcalf for some reason. I mean, can I get DK in the second? Just depending on how people are viewing these wide receivers right now. I mean, Puka, wide receiver 9. I mean, it's the perfect opportunity for you to come off at the high cost at where he's valued right now.
I like having guys on my team that I know are young and going to produce, but when you look ahead, especially if you're in Dynasty, when you look ahead to all the other factors that are involved, right? You have to kind of get out of that redraft mode for a little while and look ahead, right? What's the quarterback situation? What's the contract situation? Is the same coaching staff going to be in place, right? Is the coaching staff on the hot seat? All those different factors come into play. So that's where you kind of have to take a step back, look at their overall value right now, and see if you could take advantage of that value and get yourself a guy, like you said, like a DK Metcalf plus something for a Puka, especially if people are, you know, not sour per se on a guy like DK Metcalf, but they're just indifferent about a guy like DK Metcalf. Like, he can be easily attained in a lot of situations.
Yep. And then also look at your league. Is this how your league sees it? Are they valuing these guys this particular way? I had somebody send a trade in my inbox and send me a screenshot of what the trade was in Keep Trade Cut to show that it was a fair trade. And I'm like, you know, I don't value it the same. And so I sent something back that fit kind of what he sent me, but I sent like a bunch of shit that just equaled up to like it made sense on Keep Trade Cut for him. And I sent it back. Boom, sent him the screenshot. Oh, well, you know, this is fair. Why not do this? Oh, I don't want to break it down into that many pieces. And I tried to use the same thing back at him. But I mean, the goal almost, of course, all the time is we want to get into the top 5, top 6, top 10-ish, you want to say, right? What is the best way for me to get there? And what does my league value? If my league is valuing Puka at wide receiver 9, what else do I have to give up on top of Puka to go get Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, CD, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson? You know what I mean? Same thing with Devonta, Jordan Addison, Tank Dell. If they're going to value this guy in the top 15, and this is something that we kind of talked about in the offseason, where I talked about a lot with Christian Watson and George Pickens, to try and use to your advantage where the community is valuing them and try and tier up at those positions, get to the next level. What's the best way that we can get to that next level? I'm looking at it in that kind of way too, just playing the strategy way or strategy game, instead of saying Puka, I know he's going to be a top 10 receiver forever. Like, I know he's always going to be that good. Like, we're not always going to get it right. And it's always going to fluctuate depending on, like you had mentioned before, that quarterback situation. All of these guys are a quarterback away from being top 10 guys. I mean, we always see the correlation between having a good quarterback and what that means for you and where you can finish. So if this is all going to fluctuate, like, how can I use this to my advantage to try and get one of these top guys? What I'm looking at is, how can I get the top guys? What is my league like? and how do I get there? What's the easiest way for me to get one of those top guys?
It's so interesting too, because we talk about this part of the season where we start to see those rookie receivers like, right, catch a little bit of fire. Rashee Rice comes to mind, right?
Yeah, wide receiver
Jaden Reed a
25
little
here.
bit. Jaden Reed a little
26
bit, but Jaden
right there.
Jaden Reed's been a little more consistent. But Rashee Rice really over the last like month plus. I know he had a touchdown in his first game, but he's really solidified himself as the receiver that they trust, right? Kadarius Toney, no thank you. Sky Moore currently on IR, right? So outside of that, you trust in MVS? No. So Rashee Rice is the perfect example of a guy that I don't know if his value's ever going to be higher than what it is right now, because he's playing well and he's the guy on that team. That from the wide receiver position, obviously Travis Kelce's there, but it looks like Travis Kelce's losing a little bit of a step, right? He doesn't look the same like he did earlier in the season, even last year. So for a guy like Rashee Rice, that's the absolute perfect example where you probably got Rashee Rice in your startups. He was probably way down there. And if you got him in your rookie draft, what'd you go? Second round pick, maybe late second, somewhere in there.
Depending, yeah.
So right, depending on the format, depending on how certain people felt about him, mid second, because he went to the Chiefs. I think he was a little overvalued in rookie drafts, but clearly he's producing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect example. I was going to bring it up too. Like, let's talk about Rashee Rice. He's wide receiver 25 right now. Like you said, what's the chances that he goes even higher, or what's the chances that he goes lower? Let's take a look at what we're looking at next season. You had mentioned Travis Kelce. Looks like he's slowing down a little bit, right? I mean, Father Time is starting to catch up just a little bit. But with all this garbage wide receiver play that they've been having, what's the chances that they don't draft somebody or bring somebody in?
Mike Evans. What if they bring Mike Evans in?
And now they're the main guy. You know what I mean? So in that case, if that happens, Rashee Rice, at that point, the value is going to dip a little bit. And does he continue to produce at the same level that he's producing right now? That's going to be the question. So what can I use on top of Rashee Rice to get to that next level? What can I do to get into the top 15? What can I do to get into the top 12, top 10? What do I have to add on top of that? Same thing with Jaden Reed. I mean, he's valued right there at wide receiver 26, right after Rashee Rice. That's very high. Next year, Christian Watson could be healthy. Maybe Jaden Reed takes a step back, and now you just lost all that value. He's going to drop 20 spots.
I think there's a little bit of a difference, and maybe I'm a little too close to it because I am a Packer guy, but I think there is a little bit of difference between Rashee Rice and Jaden Reed, just from the standpoint of, I think Jaden Reed is a little more versatile than Rashee Rice in how they use him. And also, too, the collection of talent on the Packers is spread out enough where there's other guys that do get involved. And listen, Christian Watson gets hurt all the time, like all the time. I'm going, if I'm a Jaden Reed owner, I'm going into each and every week assuming that Christian Watson's not available.
No, I agree with you 100%. The situation is different, but the value is right around the same. And in that situation where the value is where it is, how can I take advantage of it to now move up? I don't want to take the chance of waiting a whole season, and I don't want to bet on these guys to be official wide receiver 2s. Like, I don't want to make that bet. You know, how can I use them to move up? How can I get a more desirable player that can give me a better shot at like the top 10-ish guys?
Yeah, no, from that standpoint, I totally agree with it. From a value standpoint, those are guys that you add on top of something, as you said, to get into the top 15. Like, I think I think when you boil it down to it, that it's that simple. If you're talking about strictly value,
we're playing Dynasty. All I'm doing is playing the market, right? We just want to play the market. Chris Godwin's all the way down here at wide receiver 36. I mean, Mike Evans said he wasn't going to re-sign if he didn't get signed. I mean, do they make amends, or is Chris Godwin the main guy there next season? Where at I think he'll be 28 next season. I mean, and then he's the main guy. He's a guy that can jump up. Is he a guy maybe that we can get for relatively cheap if you're on a contending team? Maybe you go after Chris Godwin for relatively cheap. I mean, people aren't very high on him. Amari Cooper's all the way down here.
Jerry Jeudy, my God.
I mean, I won't go any further than this at the moment. I just wanted to kind of look at some of the top guys and see kind of what the community was feeling out there and what we can try and exploit. And I think we kind of went over all that. I'm fine with going from any of these Devontas, Addisons, Dells to get any of these other guys if I can get pieces on top like DK Metcalf, Nico T. Higgins.
The T. Higgins thing is very interesting because he's developing a little bit of an injury history. And obviously with Joe Burrow being hurt, right, you could take advantage of all those combinations. Now, T. Higgins' contract situation is something that we haven't talked about in this particular scenario. Does T. Higgins' contract situation become a factor? Is he going to resign with the Bengals? Is he going to go take wide receiver one money somewhere else? Right. That's also something you have to take a look at. So it'll be interesting in his scenario to see what T. Higgins decides to do. I think we all are a big fan of T. Higgins. We love him on that Bengals roster with Joe Burrow, with Jamar Chase. Those guys are amazing. And I think if T. Higgins does re-sign with the Bengals, I think he'll jump up a little bit. To be honest with you, where's T. Higgins at?
Sure, he's at 23. So I mean,
right.
no, but even if he goes somewhere else, if he goes somewhere juicy like the Chiefs or the Bills, like it's gonna jump up.
Chiefs, yeah, obviously the Chiefs are the Bills.
And
but what
anywhere
if he
good,
goes
it's gonna jump
to?
up.
What if he goes to one of these teams where it's like
Carolina?
Right. What if he takes wide receiver one money in Carolina? Exactly. How do you feel about it then?
He's going to be wide
Great.
receiver one.
I
understand. Do I feel great about a great offense? No, but he has his chance to shine, and maybe we see the best of Bryce Young, who actually has been a very accurate quarterback. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be sexy as in some of the other teams that he could go to, but I think a lot of us would be happy in the sense that he'd be the main guy, and I think he'd still move up a little bit, maybe not as much as some of those other destinations.
Yeah, it's I mean, listen, there's multiple ways that you can kind of break that down, right? You go to Carolina, it's not sexy, but listen, when AJ Brown went to Philadelphia, right, he was playing with a Jalen Hurts that we weren't exactly sold on, and how'd that work out, right? Stephon Diggs went to Buffalo to Josh Allen that we weren't exactly sold on at the time, if you remember, and that worked out. So there's always these situations where they get. Now, do I think T. Higgins is Diggs and AJ Brown? No, I do not. But T. Higgins is pretty awesome. So it'll be really interesting. I'm really intrigued to see, how the T. Higgins situation shakes out.
Bogey said Tank Dell got to be in that conversation. Yeah, Tank Dell is one of those guys in that conversation. Listen, Tank Dell.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
And let's talk about that for a second, actually, too. Tank Dell and Puka Nacua, right? Two guys that I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but guys
exceeded
that
expectations.
They're extremely, extremely low level hits in these third and fourth round picks. They are what we call outliers, where these 7 times out of 100, 98 times out of 100, you are going to miss. It is a very, very, very low percentage hit rate. Like, you are not going to always hit on these guys. And I think that coming into this year, that is kind of on people's minds where they might like some of these third round picks, some of these fourth round picks. They're going to like certain guys, and that's going to, allow us to take advantage of certain situations or pick up extra assets. I think I had mentioned last stream about, moving back, if you're in the third round, take that person's fourth round pick or take the next year third round pick and get a player on top of that, some kind of running back or somebody that you can get, some kind of asset that can possibly gain some value on your squad and take advantage that way, move up and down in the draft, because people are going to fall in love with a lot of these guys now. I feel like a lot of people are going to be trying to find the next Puka and the next Tank Dell. I mean, no, we haven't seen a guy Tank Dell size be really successful basically in the NFL as like a wide receiver 1 or even a wide receiver 2. And it just goes to show you why. And he's just not big enough. He got trampled. Is that going to be a concern? He's also going to have Nico Collins on that same squad as well. He's just one of those guys that, again, take advantage at the moment of the value and try and move up.
I will say this. I think obviously you're right about the hit percentage and the outliers. Totally agree. However, I will say with the NFL moving the way it's moving, I think that percentage is going to go up. I don't know if it's going to go up significantly enough, but I think it will continue. We'll still see a trend of these guys like the Jaden Reeds, like the Tank Dells, like the Pukas, where it's a passing league, dude, where guys are going to come out and we're not going to expect, like, listen, JSN, Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston probably a little overvalued, but fine. Zay Flowers, really good pickup, right? Addison, like those guys, some of the guys that were picked behind them in the real NFL draft have outproduced a guy like JSN, a guy like Quentin Johnston, a guy like Zay Flowers, even though Zay Flowers has been pretty solid. So I just think with the way that NFL is trending, obviously being a passing league, right? You can't put hands on anybody like you used to. You can't, do all that. They're protecting the quarterback. There's a lot more mobile quarterbacks that can extend the plays and find these guys downfield on these broken plays. So I think the trend of being able to find these kind of Tank Dells, and Pukas, I think that'll trend upward. I don't know if it's enough to move the needle based on what you're saying in terms of getting that good value for them or good value in those third and fourth rounds where you can, like you said, take a next year's third and get something on top of it. But I do think I see more of these guys going in those third rounds of rookie drafts being able to be a bit of a steal.
Yeah, I mean, we just have never seen it. I mean, you're
This
lucky if
much.
you
I
find
agree.
one of these guys
I
for every.
agree.
There's not if you go back the last few years, there's not one guy. There's not one Puka in every draft. There's not one Tank Dell in every draft. We wound up getting two of these guys that actually happen to be really, really good. So, I think to your point, though, we are going to see some of these more smaller route running wide receivers be a lot more successful in the NFL today, as we're kind of been seeing lately. But Tank Dell, yeah, is just one of those guys that, I mean, he's a top 15. If you're telling me he's being valued as a top 15 wide receiver right now over JSN, Michael Pittman, Drake London, DJ Moore, DK. I mean, even Nico, he's ahead of Nico, T Higgins. I mean, I can't put him that high up. He's a good player.
Yeah,
But
I don't agree with him being over Nico Collins, to be honest with you.
But yeah, at the same time, this is where you just take advantage. We talk about the openings in the markets, right? When is that opening? When is that good time to make a buy or make a sell? Tank Dell right now, where he's being valued, because don't forget, like once we get the rookies that come in, the top three basically rookies that are coming in, which is Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Romo Dunze. I mean, these guys are going to be top 20 wide receivers. If we learned anything from last year, and we saw what happened with JSN, Quentin Johnson, Addison, Zay Flowers, these guys were instantly like top 24 dynasty wide receivers just coming in based off where they were drafted. So now we've got to add in, these other three guys somewhere in the top 24.
And I think
right?
where they get drafted is going to have a direct correlation, right? You feel like have a good, at least a good quarterback in place, go out and draft one of these guys. That's going to vault them up even a little bit higher, right? Like we talked about Rashee Rice, right? People were probably overvaluing Rashee Rice a little bit because he went to Kansas City. Now he's turning out to be at least a solid player, if not above average. But that's going to, like you said, that's going to kind of push those guys up maybe a little bit further than they would normally be.
Bro, Marvin Harrison is going to be basically like right here somewhere. He's going to be after the Jamar Chases, CeeDee Lambs. He's going to be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver when he comes in. He's going to be.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
If he goes to New England, you still feel the same about him?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the talent. I'm still betting on the talent, even if he goes to the Patriots. I'm still betting on the talent. He's still going to be. It doesn't matter really where he goes. The dynasty community is going to value him in the top 5, and Neighbors is probably going to be in the top 10, 12. I mean, it's automatically we're just going to push them up. And like you said, depending on the situation, might push them up even more. But we're talking about these two guys at least are going. They might be top 10 picks in the NFL draft. That's crazy.